Hey everyone, it's 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, August 28th, 2022. I hope everybody's well. And I'm sorry that the last video had to be rushed so much. There's usually always something going on here, and sometimes I really don't have the time to get something in that I want to take some time with. And that was one of them, and that's unfortunate. I hope I'll be able to revisit that subject because it's pretty important. Just to take a little bit more of a look at the possibilities as to why that particular dam, particular style of dam, was where it was. What are the possibilities of it, and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense? And maybe some things that I've been looking into concerning water measurement. How you're able to measure the specific discharge of water on a river, any kind of stream or flow over a certain time, to be able to calculate things like, can we reasonably put in a dam? What all do we need for this dam? What all do we need for the reservoir? What can we expect over time as far as water accumulation in a certain area, things that you have to know about depth or how much the water is going to rise, so on and so forth and so on and so forth, because always, as always, the devil's in the details of these things. Now, for those of you who are members of the Obery Project Panoply group I have on Facebook, which is pretty much the only reason I go on to Facebook other than seeing what people are eating that day. You'll know that I put up a post from one of my, really my most recent trip here in Michigan. I live in Michigan, so traveling in Michigan's is very easy, and there's a lot of places. If you have a spouse who is always looking for deals, you can get some pretty good deals on Airbnbs. Buyer beware. A lot of people don't take very good care of their Airbnbs, and specifically their beds are some of the worst. Absolutely the worst. If you're somebody like me, I actually have nerve problems in my head and my neck, which have just gotten worse since the chemo. Those awful black hole beds that you lay on and everything sort of sinks right into the middle. And the furniture not being any better, because if that happens, I'll head to the couch, and what usually is the case is that the couch is not any better. Anyways, so this last trip we stayed outside of Gladstone, and let me bring up Google Earth while I'm at it. Okay, I guess I'll start about this far away. Maybe I should start further away and then zoom in. I'll start over here. I don't know that we need the roads. I'm going to get rid of roads. I do like putting in the photo markers because sometimes you'll get pretty interesting photos. So anyways, yeah, here's Michigan, the Lower Peninsula, and up here, this makes up the Upper Peninsula. I'm still not sure why they call it a peninsula. I understand that it has water here, it has water here, and it has the Upper Peninsula has the what they call the St. Marie River, which is actually just a series of channels and lakes between Superior and Huron, but and then Lake what is it, Lake St. George, or the bays, they call them the Georgian bays. These, and they're huge, gigantic bays, Georgian Bay. And I think this is still actually just part of the Georgian Bay, more or less, up here. I don't know why they call it a peninsula, because, see, I always thought a peninsula had to jut out into one common body of water and not a couple like this does. But, okay, we'll forgive them that. So if you zoom in on what is then considered Green Bay, it was the very large, long bay off the west side of Lake Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. And there's two bays here. There's the Big Bay Denok, Little Bay Denok, And I know I probably did this in the last video too, but I always want to give people a good sense of location, you know, basically. So this little Bay de Noc, you have two essential points on it there, where the land essentially juts out into the water. Not necessarily a peninsula, but a point. Okay, you have one at Escanaba, and then north of it, and only a few miles north, you have Gladstone. So we only spent 1 day in Gladstone, which, just because there's not as much to see in Gladstone, unfortunately. And we probably should have spent more time there, because really there are things to see in Gladstone, okay? But we just didn't have the time. So I'm zooming in right now to a little block here. I think this is Wisconsin Street, and I don't remember if this is 13th, 15th. This is All Saints. Now, I do have 3D buildings on, but when you get into smaller towns, the 3D function really doesn't work, because I guess Google Earth hasn't applied those sometimes. This is basically a large block that now All Saints occupies. There's these two brick buildings off to the side of it here. So just giving you an idea where we were. Now bear with me on this as we go through. I will start out, I'm going to show you, I'm going to quick go back to photo number 1. The pictures that I took of this All Saints Catholic Church. The reason we stopped, I saw the towers from a number of blocks away. And that's oftentimes how I will just decide what to take pictures of in any city or town I'm staying in, because I don't always have time to research it all that well. So yeah, bear with me. I'm going to go through these pictures and just point out a few things. And I'm going to show you some old pictures that are provided by the Delta County Historical Society. They are in Escanaba, right near the Escanaba Lighthouse, which has some interesting stories too. Now, this is towards the front of the All Saints Church. This is actually on one of the towers. There's two towers at the front of this, which is pretty common in these old Catholic churches. Not always Catholic churches either. You can find these oftentimes in other denominational churches. But notice this engraving here. This is on the side cornerstone, the side cornerstone. So I got a picture of it here. Now, one thing that's interesting, I do want to bring your attention. You'll see a lot as I go through the pictures, these buildings, the brick on this building, the brick on this building, it does, of course, look like it's been tuck pointed in a number of spots. You can see that, correct? The other thing that's strange to me is it does look like these bricks here down at the bottom are much different than these. I don't know if they replaced a number of the facade bricks. A lot of these buildings I'm not able to get into because a lot of times they're just not open at the time. So I do try to find as many photos of the interior as I can find. A lot of times it's like, it's difficult. It looks like a lot of tuck pointing. You'll see a lot of patches that look like the large patches in areas were possibly tuck pointed. I don't know about more brickwork because the brick in general tends to usually match the brick of the rest of the building. Of course, this brick does not, nor do the grout lines. This is part of the addition that they put on the front, which, in my opinion, dramatically marred this building. Now you see this area here where we basically just have some mortar that was slapped right on that cornerstone. And I mean, this is just really something... what we're going to see, okay? So anyways, yeah, it looks like they definitely marred that cornerstone by putting on this this front addition as well as the rest of the building. But then they put that mortar over it, and it looks like they put a newer date, that they etched a newer date in the cornerstone. Now you can see it in the back here. And here is the sign saying who they are, when their services are, and so on and so forth. Here's an addition that we'll see again a little bit later on, which is supposed to be original, as is the back structures too. And there's kind of some interesting things about that. What else is interesting? Well, you'll see when we get to the construction photos. Probably nothing else interesting in this one. And here's a little bit better view. As I said, it does look like pretty much about this whole wall in here was tuck pointed. Up in here, nope, not so much. Right up these two. Now, is this on these towers especially, because sometimes you see them, are these simply structural? If you're going up vertical, or if you're making a long wall, and you're using these small common, because these look like your basic common brick size. Common brick size, I'm going to average, is on average 4 inches by 8 inches by about 2. It kind of changes depending on which brick you're using. Maybe 2 and a half, 2 3/4. That's your basic common brick dimensions. And you can build walls. You can build the entire walls for a whole structure out of brick. It has been done. Sometimes, essentially, like sometimes structural walls will be built for a building. They'll be used to run more like purlins of a roof between, and then they'll sometimes put a type of sheathing over that, and use a different material, or use perhaps brick or block. Not on the gable walls. The entire gable wall would be of brick. I've seen that. So there's a lot of ways to do this. Brick can be used as a facade. Brick can be used as the entire wall. They're not going to insulate very well unless they put a pocket in the brick. And I'm just kind of explaining this. There are some elements to this that we're going to notice more as we go through. Over here, we have all the trees and the bushes that are planted extremely dense in this area, more than any other area on the building that I noticed. And that's something that should at least keep our attention as we see some other things as we go. Obviously, there is a basement, and a very full basement in this building. Glass block windows are used. We'll see in the older pictures. Now, just on the surface, does this foundation, when I was up close, does that look necessarily like it was concrete poured 100 years ago? Because that's the stories that this was probably actually done in maybe the 70s or the 80s, this front addition, and we'll kind of see what they say about. I don't know that necessarily was, but this kind of ties in with the story. Again, we have newer brick used here, which actually looks a lot like this brick. This is what's making me think they did a number of these things, of course, at the same time. And when we look at the older pictures, you'll notice that this tower over to we'll just say the left tower as you're facing, the building doesn't have this Greek arch window with, of course, what appears to be a limestone sill, which we'll find in all the other windows, nor does it have one on the side like this tower has this louvered Gothic-looking opening on the other side too. On the building as it stands today, as I took the pictures of it not quite, maybe a month ago. Real interesting. Looks like little actual limestone blocks for, it just looks like decoration, really. And the oddity of these lines that seem to extend, I don't know if it's just directly on top of the brick, But, you know, we have what appears to be limestone all over this cap, banding all over the place, and I don't see that everywhere. Just something I'm pointing out. These, of course, are newer brick structures, and actually a wood framed and what looks like wood sided. Probably much newer, because I don't even know that that was on there in the Google Earth. Maybe that's it right there. But when I looked at it from the side, it was behind, excuse me, this. So that right there, just to show you, is that right there, brick. So this was probably a later addition within the last few years, because I believe these Google Earth photos, the most recent ones, they have a date. They have this sort of date section on here. Historical imagery. Yeah, and the latest one is 2013. So that's about 9 years ago. Okay, that's about the most recent you're going to get from Google Earth, it would seem. So that would be within 9 years, that building right there. That's not going to factor heavily into what we're looking at. Here's one shot I took since we were in kind of a terrible hurry, unfortunately, from the back left-hand side. Again, none of these little, what seem to be decorative blocks are in the back of the tower. Obviously, the church would seem to have been re-roofed since it was first built. It almost looks like the cap on the back here has been added since in probably, maybe not the same material as in the first place. The parking lot would seem to, of course, have been since they first made it. But we have this retaining wall back here, which looks like it's in terrible, terrible shape. We have the exposed rebar and parking lot underneath, and I don't know why that is. Just one more from the left side. There was a chimney company that was actually there. They had some scaffolding set up over here. I'm not 100% sure why. We have chimney here, we have chimney here. Why they would need them back here. I didn't notice whether there was another company, but perhaps this chimney company, because they were a chimney company, they do exteriors too. Maybe they do tuck pointing or other kinds of work that I'm just not familiar with. So probably nothing too strange about that, really. Now, this is the side edition that has this dental cap on it. And we'll see that in the older pictures, too. What's strange is this very back portion of the building, which we will actually see in the old pictures that they say were taken when the building was being built. These things, the foundation area, which again looks more like limestone than concrete to me. This is in there, but for some reason, neither it does not have the banding that all of the other portions of the structure has. Kind of weird, don't you think? And nor does it have the dental cap on it like this does, like that does. I think it's a little strange, okay? But not end-all be-all of strange craziness, okay? This would have to be, this rotunda sort of area here would have to be part of the original structure. You would think. I'm assuming because of interior photos, but I don't know that for sure. And there's not enough detail concerning this that would lead me to believe for sure it was. The reason I say that is because of old interior shots, but you know, what is old and what isn't? Pay attention that you have a Gothic arch here that was actually an entryway that has since been removed. You'll see this in the old pictures too. Really interesting about this. I wish I had more time and I had gotten more close-up photos of it. Okay, because you do have the banding. Now, somebody could get this banding. You can get these from various places. Like there's some companies down around Bloomington, Indiana, because there's large limestone quarries around Bloomington, Indiana, and a lot of this structural and decorative limestone is still made down in those quarries in Indiana, and probably other quarries in other places that quarry for structural and decorative limestone. You can get still banding very similar to this. You can get cap kind of similar to what you see. You get cap like this, a pretty normal, somewhat flat cap that you would put on a brick wall, depending on the dimensions. But you can get custom dimensions. You're just going to pay for them. Okay. We do have an opening right here, which is louvered. This band, now here's the interesting thing about what I'm looking at here in this structure. This band that you're seeing is representing what our typical floor height is throughout this whole structure. See the banding over there. And you'll see in the old picture, when I get to the old pictures, why. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to try to keep, I have a number of windows open here. I'm going to try to keep them. I want one that is just, see, we have interiors. Maybe I'll keep that one interior. And this one is exterior shots. So now this is one that is actually from the Delta County Historical Society. What we can see is this photo is supposed to be taken from the front right at quite a distance, because I stood outside this and it didn't feel like it was a huge open space. So they must have been standing in the yard, or there wasn't a house here on this corner, I guess, from where this is being taken, because it seems like it's being taken from quite a distance. You need to achieve a pretty good distance just to get all of this in. I had to stand pretty far back just to get in what I got in, and we didn't have these additional parts of the towers here, which are pretty tall, with these domes, these pointed domes, and crosses on top of the pointed domes. Now, you'll get a feeling for how big this building is when you see these pictures that are purported to be pictures of when this was built. Now, I want to bring your attention. See, this is all, again, I'm assuming this is limestone because it looked to me to be limestone. We have back here limestone cap and higher chimneys. Okay, when we saw the current pictures, these chimneys were much shorter. They were down about there. Let me go back to this. You see, they had been reduced quite a lot in height, and these limestone caps had been put on top of them since. And this is what I'm saying. This looks to be at least aluminum cap in the back here instead of the original limestone, which it appears like the front is still bearing the original limestone with that crucifix in the back, which it looks like, at least in this old photo, we didn't have this crucifix. Now, what do we have on the roof in this old photo? I can't actually be 100% sure what we have on the roof in that old photo. You'll see that even the overhangs or the cornices are quite different looking in the newer photos today than here. Are we seeing a slate, some type of a flat slate roof? And I'm not sure exactly what's going on with the cornices, whether we have some type of old gutters here, and I'm just not seeing, are they along here? Maybe old worn copper gutters, but I'm not, or stone gutters. Is that what we're seeing here? Are we seeing stone gutters? And maybe here are the old downspouts for that gutter. I'm not 100% sure. But what I am 100% sure of is this building here is remarkably different. Remarkably different than the one that I was looking at. Now, the first thing I want to bring your attention to on this building is, do you remember how I'm going to try to go to the right pictures here. On this building, go back a little bit. We'll start with the first one. Just backtrack a little bit. On that first picture, I showed you this. It's got these numbers 1920 to 21 because that's when they claimed they built it. They claimed from the time they broke ground, remember this has a full basement. And we'll go to their website real quick, and maybe we should read it real quick before we start scrolling through these again, because these pictures are remarkably interesting. Not only the ones I took, but the ones that Delta County Historical Society has, and that have been posted on the official webpage for this particular church. And it should be here. Nope, that's not it. That's dams. Here it is. And I'm in Phase 2. Phase 2 is supposed to be another building that was said to have burnt down the day after they had their meeting on building a third church, which that's just, I guess, the most bizarre coincidence ever. But I'm going to read you actually some of this because it's not that long. They only include a few paragraphs on the building of this third magnificent church that you see right here. And then the rest of what you're going to see down here is mostly just this history of the pastors or priests that they had at that particular location. Not a great deal of information about that location itself, unfortunately. So yeah, let's just look at the teeny tiny bit of information they give us about this Phase 3 of the All Saints Catholic Church in Gladstone, Michigan. Plans had been made to build a new church in about 5 years, but the fire made this undertaking necessary at once. Meanwhile, Sunday Masses were held at the Lyric Theater. The new brick structure was built on the same block as the school. Contractor Arntzen, Arntzen, was in charge of the work. Now, pay attention. Within 10 months from the day that the first shovel full of earth was thrown, and 14 months after the fire of the second building that this All Saints Catholic Church of Gladstone, Michigan occupied. Okay, 14 months after the fire of that church, a magnificent church with edifice, a magnificent church edifice with a seating capacity of 825. Of 825, guys. Listen, Gladstone, Michigan, in the 2010 census had 4,000 people. Okay? So in 1920, 100 years ago, they built a church building in Gladstone, Michigan that could seat basically a quarter of the 2010 population. Now, real quick, I didn't have this up, but I do want to, maybe we'll do that. I should just go to the Wikipedia, but because a lot of times the Wikipedia will just give you the, I shouldn't have even put in census. Just do the Wikipedia real fast, because I've been there already. It said first settled in 1877. So, okay, we're looking at 43 years before this church with a seating capacity of 827 people, Gladstone was founded. Okay, so apparently, according to the census, in 1890 there was 1,337 people, but by 1930 it had shot up remarkably to 5,170. Now, I know that after World War II they completely decimated the iron industry in the western UP, but it's still holding. It's dropped a few hundred by 1940, 1950. By the year 2000, it shot up again to 5,000, and then declined again in 2010 to 4,900, and then shot back up to 5,257 in 2020. It's remained relatively consistent in all that time from 1910, 1920. That's weird. It's just kind of weird that it's kept that sort of consistent consensus since then. Pretty strange. But going back to their page. So anyways, they say Within 10 months from the first day that the first shovelful of earth was thrown, and 14 months after the fire, a magnificent church edifice with a seating capacity of 825 was completed. Was completed in 10 months. Let me go back here. In 10 months from the first shovelful of earth. Let me pull back on this, and I want you to see this place. This place is pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing, to be honest. No, is it the biggest? Not really, but to give you a sense, it's not the smallest either. It's not the smallest either. To give you a little bit of a sense, these are supposed to be the older pictures of it, which they don't have these huge decorative altar pieces. I wonder what they were all made out of. They said they kept the same altar, the same wooden altar, for the longest time that one of the early pastors had carved by hand. I have to assume it was this altar right here. They, I believe, have another picture of it in one of their other historical pages. But this is no small feat. Okay? It's no small feat. 10 months. The beautiful stained glass windows imported from Germany depict the mysteries of the Holy Rosary. Most of these windows were donated by members of the parish in memory of loved ones. The most revered Bishop Frederick Ice blessed the cornerstone on May 1st, 1920, and officiated at the formal dedication on Sunday, September 4th, 1921, which was the date of the first Mass. Guys, that's so freaking fast. That's so fast. And I'm going to bring some things to your attention in all of this, too. And then, really, they don't honestly have much more except, well, they bought this property over here, and that's where you see the parking lot and the brick buildings now. You're going to get a good idea. Now, this was supposed to be an inn. I might get to one other picture that has been published by the Delta County Historical Society, though I think they have far more pictures than this, to be completely honest with you. They post extremely low resolution images. They're so tiny. It's awful. And to get the higher res images that are used on this site, you have to put in a big form just to get one higher resolution image of these things. My goodness. Anyways, this is a huge building, a huge wooden building with a large rotunda back here. It had at least one, I think 2 wings off of it extending in the other direction. And I'll bring up the larger shots of it. We can get 2 right before this. This is just enormous. Okay. With a number of large brick chimneys in it. Here we can see it from over here again. Okay. And look at how this building here that they said they built from start to finish, it's got a full basement from the time of digging that first shovel full, and it just dwarfs this building. You saw that in these other 2 pictures. Look how large this building is. Get a sense of how big this building was, right? Finished building just dwarfs it. Now I'm going to bring a few things to your attention. And you can see a number of the pictures I took at the Obery Project Panoply Facebook. If you just go there and ask to join, agree to the rules, which are really simple, then you're in. But you know, if I try to, you lose focus on this picture. It's relatively high res, but not super high res. You get in a little closer, trying to see this. Now remember, this is the stone. And if we go back up here, see this? Somebody did this after the fact. Maybe they could say, well, we did that because, you know, we had to cover it up with this addition on the front. You think so? Well, it's interesting. That's interesting because I'm going to get in here a little bit. This little part right here might have been what you saw that mortar over. And here, it's just so important. It's history. they covered this history right up. I guess they couldn't have figured out any other way to do this other than to cover up this history. And when you see this, boy, I don't know. I've tried to really zoom in and look at this really good. I can't tell that this number is a 2. Got a 0 here. Now on that other one that they put in after the fact, they put in 1920, 1921, right? On this. And that looks like it was a pretty big cornerstone. Now the numbers are much smaller that they etched into there. You would think with such a small amount of space that they wouldn't have put in 2021, because here we've got one date right there. We've got one date, and it looks like a 0. Can't tell what that number is. This doesn't look like a 9 right here. This doesn't look like a 9. I don't know. It looks maybe like a 1. And this one has already, looks like it's been marred very badly, whatever's right here. And is there one more right over here? I don't know. If I tried to center it, I would say no. But it's hard to say what that date is. Now, that's not the only thing they marred. I mean, if you look at the front of this, wow. Wow. It's quite striking. It's quite beautiful. When you consider all of the brickwork and then the stonework capping all of it here, the stairs, whether they were stone or concrete, quite nice because we have three quite beautiful stairways with very nice windows. Now, the thing is, in 10 months, that's less than a year. They say 10 months that they got this, the glass, the stained glass that you see on the sides here, from Germany, donated by parishioners, because it all meant something to them. Well, how did they have time to have this designed? And get these stained glass windows in from Germany based on the selections of their parishioners in time. What are we going with on this one? That they simply just put in the openings, left them in, and then simply installed those later on down the road. I mean, if that were the case, they certainly did not let us know that that were the case. They would have to put some sort of blank in here, and they said that they were holding Mass that year later. So what did they have in there, if anything, in the meantime? Because if they put windows in, even in the meantime, in these sorts of shapes, that's going to cost a lot of money. It would seem like it would just make sense to wait and get those in. But they said 10 months, and they're having services from the first shovel. Now, of course, you'll notice there's a lot of things about this other than that interesting cornerstone. All of these beautiful entryways that you're seeing here with these old lamps, probably sitting on iron, these old globes and these lamps. I wonder how they were ran. Is there conduit that we would see, or were these ran right into the stone and electricity provided to them that way? Because absolutely they look like they were electrical. How was that all done? I'd certainly love to get in here if I go back to Gladstone and take a look. How much did they retain? Because look at this. The addition that they put over this, you can see it tying in right up here. You see these notches to this sort of banding that you have up here on this upper level. That's this. So this addition's all the way over. You can see covering all the way over. They had bricked in these spaces. They've probably taken out this entire area here. Beautiful, beautiful entryway. Very, very nice keystone. Very nice capstones. Rounded capstones here. And capitals on either side of this entryway. Are you telling me that this was not worth preserving? Built 100 years ago in 10 months. I mean, for that guy to build this, what are these? We got bell towers. I'm seeing sky through these elongated Gothic arches with banding around them. And look at that dentil the dental caps with the little globes on the corner. Probably one piece stone, that whole thing right there, that whole corner piece to it. It's just beautiful. What were these domes made out of? These pointed domes, or maybe they're called Gothic domes. I'm sorry, I don't know the style specifically. What were they made out of? Because they're quite odd. They seem to have a sheen, these ones over here, in whatever light. When you're in the UP, light's kind of funny. Because either if you have a full sunny day, the sky is so blue, it's just amazing. And when you don't, it is so gray, and it looks like the wintertime because this tree back here bears no foliage. But if this is a tree over here, it's hard to tell whether it's bearing foliage or not. We have an evergreen up here, but there's a reason they're called evergreens. So it's hard to say. Is this snow on the ground over here? It's hard to say. Very, very, very high res, beautiful, beautiful image. I'd still like to know if that's a slate roof, or if anybody thinks that's a nice slate roof right there, and why they thought they would have to cover it after, what, less than 100 years that they're putting a new roof on it. Let's go back here. So yeah, here's a few pictures. This is just a portion of the addition, and then the center part of the addition is gable. So you have a gable and basically like two shed roofs, one on either side. The stained glass they use, probably nothing compared to what you would see with this old German import stained glass. And yeah, because this center is gabled, then they possibly could have covered right over that gable. And again, I could not get in. Did not know what this was hiding either. And had I known, I would certainly have gotten in. Now, one thing to pay attention to, we can see in these pictures, especially this one, I know the sun. See, I told you, sunny days in the UP are sunny, boy. We have these louvered Gothic. I pointed them out, and they're nowhere to be found in this picture. Nowhere to be found. They don't look, to me, I'll go back here, they don't look all that new. They look old. They look old. And the stone sills that have been put in here, quite nicely done. I didn't see a whole ton of tuck pointing over here around it. You see what I'm saying here? Now look, I don't see a ton of it here. Now we see it on the upper corners here by this Gothic louvered window, but not so much on this side. So it's interesting, makes me wonder how long ago that would have been done. Now they did say, I don't know if it was at that site or not, that there were a number of renovations that were done in keeping with Vatican II, whatever that means. Now, this is what you'll see today if you go into here. Now, the interesting thing about this roof, I can't tell you exactly how the construction was done, but this roof was made in two. It's a two-piece kind of roof that I've seen before. So essentially you've got this vaulted ceiling in here, and it looks like you have these basically these rafters, if you want to call it that, but very much like a lot like a steel structure. If you would see like large steel buildings where they would mostly just have these large frame members, one here and then one, quite a bit, 20 feet or so away. And they can make them these shapes, but they would typically be on the outside, and then you would have all of your purlins in between. This has what looks to be like an interior vaulted ceiling that has been constructed even on the oldest pictures. You can see it right here. Same thing, except in these old pictures, you have the full rotunda exposed with this very large, very ornate, look at it. Large, ornate, with the two doors, which of course makes me think that on the exterior, which one should I use to get to the exterior? I'll use this. Try to get to the exterior fast. It would be this. It would be this. As much as this appears strange, because I don't want to say it doesn't match. Because perhaps it does. The brickwork looks the same. Brickwork also, it does look quite old on this, but as you'll see. And then, of course, there were two doors at the bottom on the inside of what this rotunda should have been, which should have been leading to probably chambers here and here. Some things about this are a little odd, and if you will continue to bear with me here. So, let's see. One thing is the ceiling. Now, 10 months. They say 10 months. Now, just building these two kinds of... So you can have one structure that is simply the roof, and it's going to represent the outside roof structure, okay, tying in with the exterior walls. And then a lot of times you'll have an interior. I've seen this done. I've actually helped build some of these. You'll have an interior vaulted ceiling, which will be slightly different on the interior than the exterior, okay? But if you do, you also have to support whatever systems are being used. Like here, we can see in this very old photo, it looks like a very similar type of rafter, has a very slight curve up to the ridge line there. If you have this, you're going to need to support it on the inside, excuse me, on the inside, and either this area up here would have to be a continuous beam, a sort of an LVL sort of beam, because from front to back, that's a lot of space. The span from this front wall to the back wall where this would go, because I don't see in any of the pictures, I'm not seeing, you see this is a more modern one, I'm not seeing any sort of support beams, and even if there were just beyond this camera, you're looking at least 30 feet or so before you have any support. It looks like this is all clear space right here. So in order to support this interior ceiling, besides this being the exterior roof, you need some kind of very serious support beam between this and wherever your support is back here. And I'm going to have to assume from what I've seen that this extends the entire seating area of the interior of this church, which means that to me, this is not solid LVL. This looks, you see how you're seeing the light from this ceiling through these vertical decorations here? That tells me that there is quite possibly steel beams being set where they're being hid by this trim up here, this concave trim, and I can't see, of course, the other side. It would appear. Now, it would seem like maybe this goes up. Let's see, look at these old pictures. So, in the old pictures, you have this sort of, almost looks like what we would think of as Mideastern Turkish. It's just old, we can say old Roman, but it looks not quite Gothic, and I'm sure somebody would know exactly the name of this design. And then you would have this structure here. Everything looks a little bit different, doesn't it, than what we see today? It looks like they have redone some of this. This doesn't look like the same trim up here. This looks all quite the same, but either which way, you'd have to have serious beams that are running the length of this to have this, this sort of ceiling, which is separate from this ceiling that's actually concealing your members for the roof. Probably steel. They'd have to be put into a very good pocket over here. I'm not sure what kind of masonry they would have used to pocket that in over here. But everything that I'm seeing when I look at this inside, who knows how old these pictures are? And the reason I say that is because I think it's a complete assumption to think that we've only been taking decent pictures or high-res pictures for even 150, 170 years. You don't know how old cameras and pictures or even film is just because they said that they started doing it not very long ago. So I don't know how old the interiors are. I don't know how old this exterior is because I don't see anything else in there that could necessarily positively identify it one way or the other. You see, every kind of identification method comes with certain sorts of caveats, and I'm hoping I'll be able to actually it's a real short read through. You don't know because of this telephone pole that it's a certain date that it was taken. Why? Oh, because we only figured out how to transmit sounds via wires relatively recently. Is that how you're going to date it? Because of this? And who knows whether or not this was superimposed or not. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I will show you some strange things, though. One of them is that, for instance, in this photo, again, I don't know what this foundation was made out of because it would appear that they have a sealant on the exterior of it. However, if they do, the sealant across the back, this back wall is very strange to me because somebody was either being very careless and ran this up way too high, and they would have to clean this off because it would be exposed. We can see that in the modern or even the old picture. We don't have to even get into the modern pictures. I wish I had opened up a second screen. I'll take this screen and use it to go back to this picture. We can see all of this would be exposed. It was designed so that all of this stone or concrete, I should have gotten closer pictures, it looks like stone would have been exposed. So whoever ran that sealant up on it would have had a really bad time as he spent all of the time trying to clean all of that off. To me, that looks blacked out. That does not look like, you see all of this actually looks like it probably was sealant for the foundation. This does not. Not sure what's going on here, whether this is supposed to be stone, whether this is supposed to be a wall, or what exactly. But there's more oddities about this picture than just that. So yeah, not only do you not have the banding, which, by the way, I do want to say, if they built this in 10 months, they broke ground in May, would be good, they'd have to, because they're up in the UP, and you need to have, it needs to be at least in the mid-40s or so for concrete to cure, and even in the mid-40s, it's going to take more than 3 days. It's going to have to be in the 50s, and then it can cure pretty good in a few days. But you have this entire perimeter, because it seems that the basement is covering the entire perimeter. And this looks, even in these old pictures, it looks a lot better and smoother than poured concrete. But even if it was, you'd have to build forms for all of it and then pour it. I mean, these days they're essentially steel panel forms. You'd have to put all of these forms into to do this pour. Don't know how close the closest concrete company would be that could accommodate. You'd have to mix this on site. I haven't seen a large concrete mixer. Build these forms, mix it on site, pour it, then seal it. And if they're not, and if this is actually stone, because when I look really close, it almost looks like it's courses of stone. Okay. If it's cinder block, I don't know where that would have had to have come from. Basically concrete block, which I don't think it is, unless it has a decorative stone cap. And if we're looking at that, and just speaking of stone, how long would it have taken to get all of the stone, the banding, these decorative portions for the areas of brickwork where the features, those were like in those towers. Let me see here. So essentially what I'm talking about are piers. All of the stone decoration for what appears to be piers that you're especially having in the towers here. Piers here. Now the whole idea is that if this was all entirely brick wall and there wasn't lumber that it was outside of, that the piers would actually help to strengthen the wall as you go. But either which way, you have a whole heck of a lot of pieces of stone that have to be ordered, have to be shipped, and then come in, and this is 1920. Some of the things actually said that railroads didn't even come through till, I would have to double check what time. But if so, probably only one line. It was probably the Sioux line. Now, a couple of other things when you look at this. If you look at this back wall, again, strange that they would band every single other wall in this but this one. And the chimney and this part of this structure behind looks very, very weird. Just a very strange look to it. But you look at this. Now, let me get you the... here's the modern one, the pictures I just took. Now, you could assume that these three openings with the glass block, since the other basement windows you'll see are glass block, that they're actually for stairwell and opening up to the basement, okay? And we can assume this because of what we see here. It's a full-size doorway, and it looks like we'll have a stairwell going down here, because you wouldn't have really any other reason to have these windows down this low, okay? But the oddity is not that necessarily. What the oddity is if you look at this back wall, you have window, and then you have another window, and the space between those two looks to be about the width of this window, which looks to be about 4 feet. Okay, this looks to be about 2 plus, and then you've got about 4 feet, and then you've got this window that's about 4 feet. Then you've got about 12 feet maybe to this next window, which is about the size, maybe a little bigger than this first window. Some odd window sizes, but that's not the weird thing. The weird thing is when we look on this old photo, we can see the window openings as perspective draws us away. What do we got? 1, and then we've got what looks to be about the same size wall as next window opening. That's consistent. Then, strangely enough, we have what appears to be that third window opening. Of course, that's weird because this all looks pretty normal, and we have that third window opening way in the back, and based on everything I see here, it doesn't appear like we ever had another window opening here. And if we did, no, and this one went all the way to the foundation stone here, and that looks like stone, of course. It doesn't look like concrete. But it is a little bit different. Well, it looks actually a lot like the banding. So anyways, that's kind of a strange thing. As well as why we have what looks to be brick running back away from us here on the inside that looks completely washed out. It looks smooth down here. And when you get to this left side of what is this sort of addition, I guess, it's pretty rough looking. I don't know why this corner right here is so rough looking. If you look at this old photo, you can see in the back here, we have this opening, which was bricked up in the ones that I took. But you have a couple of little walls on either side of these steps. And so you could say that, well, that was because that's where the steps and everything was going to go. Sure, but why is it so rough looking? And why is the brick over here? I'm going to have to assume that the brick over here would have been part of the the main cathedral space or chapel space. Why is that washed out as well? That's going in this direction, this going in this direction. Further back from this, you see this brick is running in the same direction as that brick. This brick, same direction as that brick. If this was a sun thing, I would expect this in the front to be washed out. Not that in the back. It's not like everything else in the back here is washed out. Why would that be washed out? It's kind of strange. I don't understand why, if this is supposed to be sealer, it's so high. Again, we're talking about something bituminous, and if that's the case, somebody's going to be spending some time washing that off with solvent, and it's not going to come off that easy, especially if it's either stone or concrete, because it's got a certain porosity and it's going to hold that stuff pretty well, which is why it's used in the first place. Go to one more picture here. And here's the thing. In 10 months, you see big crews on this? Is that big crew in this picture? Well, it's just one picture. Here's another picture. Is this a huge crew? This is not a huge crew. This isn't a huge crew. And we had one opening, which leads to the basement, and I'm not sure if this whole thing was opened up, and that's why we see brick extending down so far. I guess this is supposed to be ground level down here, though the mules and carts seem pretty high over here. Somebody thought it was a good idea to lean a pane of glass against a large stack of brick over here, which again seems to be washed out. Doesn't seem to be in very good shape, and it doesn't really seem to be stacked very well either. What looks to be brick over here. These stone, what seem to be stone doorposts that we're supposed to be seeing here, I don't see them at all in here. They would have to be over here, okay? They're not here in the front. They don't appear to be here, this back corner, or near the door, so I'm not sure where those came from, to be 100% honest with you. Now, it does appear that what I'm looking at makes it seem like they were putting in completely bricked walls. So the entire thing, again, this is doable fast, doable in 10 months, even with a crew this size. Is it that doable? Because you're going to have to take, if you want to do this right, you're going to have to take measurements all around to make sure you're staying very good, even and level with all of your brick courses. And there's so much detailed work here in these brick courses. You see, quite beautiful. You got piers all around the towers. You got piers all around the walls of the cathedral space. So even if these were entirely brick walls, it's going to take time. Now, this is the Delta County Historical Society. And there's a few interesting things about this, by the way. This is supposed to be a picture from the other angle, and this would have been the inn, I guess, which they say they bought, and I think they said they turned this into a school. It's a really big building. And there's a couple of things about this that I don't completely understand. One, if we go back to these pictures, where's the huge, this beautiful big rotunda? This was during the construction. This big, beautiful rotunda back here. Is it part of another building? I don't know, because now that I look at it, it all looks illustrated up in here. This looks illustrated. Doesn't even look real. It doesn't even look real. Go back to this photo, the website here. I see no big, beautiful rotunda of any kind here. Where'd it go? Was it part of something else? This is a very large building. Whatever it would be, if it was so far that it was to the left of the photograph being taken, whatever it was would have to be very, very large. And if we want to convince ourselves that this building just looks blurred and odd and like an illustration once we get to the top of this, how far in the distance would this have had to have been? Because it's in the same focus. It's in the same focus as the top of the building here. Where'd it go? It's gone. It's gone. And now, this says circa 1921. That's when they said that this church was completed. 1921. Rotunda, gone. It was just a year earlier. It was just a year earlier. One other thing that I thought was a bit interesting to look at, and again, you can see how bad these photos are. This is supposed to be circa 1920. So if they started in May of 1920, this would have had to have been sometime during 1920. Looks like everybody's wearing coats, but I don't see snow all over. It doesn't look like there's any foliage on the trees back there. So I don't think it would have been in May. It probably would have had to have been that autumn, since I got people in coats and hats. These, you're not going to see these big. I can't even zoom in on this. And of course, they have this huge watermark just slathered right across the front. This is supposed to be the bishop who was presiding at the time doing a cornerstone, making a cornerstone ceremony here. Now, if this was based on all of their coats and stuff, they couldn't have been this far along because we see walls, sections of walls behind. They say they built this platform up. So this platform, I'm going to have to assume, based on where people's heads are and where the platform is, this would have had to have been built somewhere around where the main floor would have been. So that's the cornerstone right there. We'd have to figure the platform being built right in here as he went through this ceremony, okay? So given coats and hats and being in the UP, this could have been September, October. By the time it gets to November in the UP, man, oh man, there can be a good deal of snow on the ground. So the trees don't have foliage though, so I'm going to have to say September, October, maybe November. And they look nowhere near being finished. He's doing this ceremony. Now, if they started in May, early May, April, no, I'm sorry, March. I may have said May. I apologize. March. That's when they said the old one burned down and they started. Would have had to have been March. Let me just double check that real quick. He did the cornerstone ceremony was May 1st, they said. I'm sorry. ICE blessed the cornerstone on May 1st, 1920. They started in March. I apologize. So we'll go back to that picture real quick. Okay, so this would have had to have been May. Listen, folks, sometimes it can get pretty chilly in the UP, but not, you see all these people wearing coats? Not that chilly. Okay, so I don't know how they're figuring for, and in the UP, I mean, you get used to that weather, and in May, May, it would be hard to believe that this many people were wearing these coats and these hats and everything, you know. It would have, if it was rainy, maybe. I mean, maybe. But just to build this whole structure for a cornerstone ceremony, no, they could say they had the platform up because they were working their way up. Seems like it extends all the way around. You have wood framing all around here. I don't know why you have this way out here. And you can see, if this is supposed to be the corner, this going way back with all of these planks ran along there. It's huge, huge, wide planks ran all the way along here, and I really don't know what that's for either. I see a lot of what appears to be wood framing, which you could say was for scaffolding, support, things like that. Maybe so. Maybe so. In a brick building. But I would be shocked. They said they started in March. In 2 months, they would have all this foundation on. They would have that floor in. Because that would have... What kind of floor was that? Are you trying to tell me that was wood? That was... So we're talking about wood joists. I'm not sure exactly what kind of floor it had because we're not seeing it in these pictures. And then a lot of this brickwork done already in 2 months for him to lay that cornerstone. I don't know. I'm having trouble believing some of these things. Especially when I see what has been done on the inside. And I look at these old pictures. These old pictures of the inside are, of course, they're supposed to be right after it was built. That's kind of a nice... This is later on down the road, they put this partition in, hiding the back. I don't know what they're, or if they took that old, big, beautiful, ornate altar out. And here we have it right here again. Look at it. Look at the size of the guys. Look at this thing. Look at that thing. Oh, that must have been something. I mean, see it? And then we had one over here, one over here. Wow. That's really something. And then, of course, they had these little partition walls, which you'll usually find in Catholic churches. In these old pictures, yeah, look at it from the row, or from the aisle. Look at that thing. And it's not there anymore. 10 months. And what you have to ask yourself is, what would have been all the conditions to make them remove large portions of these back chimneys? In the meantime, to remove... how tall was that? We have to guess. Let me see if I can guess. This door had to have been... and being the front door, I would say, I would not be surprised if these were around 8 feet. And if I could just kind of imagine up here, so to the top, more than 12 feet. Based on perspective, okay, from the platform of what still exists of the tower, up far more than 12 feet, another 10 feet or so here, to remove all of this in the 100 years since they built it, to remove all of this mass from the chimneys. They've removed these side steps. They removed them. They're beautiful. These, they're not still inside. I guarantee you these aren't still inside. They built some kind of, or poured common steps up. They might have blocked off probably these 2 doors because you probably can't enter these towers. Go up these towers. See what's in there all the way up. Maybe they're bell towers, but you can't go in them. Had time to take out these portions of this tower and put in those Gothic louvers. That's a whole lot happening in 100 years, eh? And boy, are there a lot of questions. This was all part of the foundation. Go in here. See, there was a door here. You remember I showed you these pictures of the front? Go back a little bit. Yeah, these pictures of the front. There was a door here where they got the trees at and everything. Go back to that. Blown up. See? Right there. And this was stone or concrete out here with a walk down to it. And we have steel railings. Took all of that out. And let's see. One more of the construction, so-called. And let's see, I'll get to it from here. Here. That would have been here. And I'm just hoping that whatever they were using for their header, they were using, I would think, a very, very thick steel plate in here, that it's actually hidden in this picture. I'm hoping. So. A lot of strange stories about this church building that they say they made happen. They say they made this, what you see here, with these statues. These statues, 7-8 foot tall at least. Stained glass windows from Germany. All of this, I'm assuming, limestone, capping, and decoration. Look at these. These are 6 foot tall. If they're 6 foot tall, how much do they weigh? Putting those in place. all the limestone banding, these stairways, beautiful stairways, probably iron lamp posts and globes here. 10 months. 10 months. I'd still like some, what anybody thinks might have been the nature of this roof. I'm assuming slate with possibly stone gutters. I'm thinking we've got stone gutters in here. Not a non-ambitious project. This is a very ambitious project. 10 months, I've got 2 pictures that shows me a very, very small workforce, and I've got 1 picture of the cornerstone laying where the amount of work done is impossible in 2 months. And I shouldn't say impossible, should I? The earwig says all things are possible. So, who knows? But something to be aware of, right? And this is just Gladstone. This is a small place. Small place. And I will say this concerning, well, what were these always meant to be churches? Because that's the idea, right? This was a church built as a Catholic church at a certain point in time. That's the story they're telling us. Were these always meant to be, excuse me, churches? As we come to know them. Well, I mean, biblically, if you want to follow the New Testament, nothing like this was ever required, ever. And if we want to say, well, it was, if we want to believe in Rome and the history of Roman Catholicism, that these were old, what were they? Pagan temples that have been brought to us since. Is that what they are? I don't know. I don't know. I will say this. This sort of design that we see with this main hall area, and oftentimes these towers off the front, rotundas off the back, and various features and accoutrements, there are sometimes multiples of these buildings looking remarkably old that I can find in one town within blocks of one another. So is that what they were? Is that what they were for? I don't know, but I can't see a good reason to oftentimes have so many of these so close together in some instances. So I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say about this, other than just look at it. Really, just look at it. It's something to behold. Unfortunately, you're not going to get as many detailed, newer pictures of it as here. But if you join the Facebook group, the Obery Project Panoply, I do try to post whenever I go anywhere, visit any places, as many good pictures that I got of those places as possible, so that for anybody who wants to look into the stories concerning these places, when they were said to have been built, and so on and so forth, we'll have some pretty good visual references to compare them. Okay? So with that, I'll see you next time. And as far as things appear, it looks like we're still on for 1 p.m. this coming Saturday, which is Saturday, September 3rd, for the first Their Story live stream. So see you guys later.